Good morning, and welcome to this virtual gathering of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Richmond. My name is Suzanne Short, and I am pleased to be serving this community on its board of directors. As we begin a second fall season of being unable to safely gather in person, I wish to thank you for continuing to take the time to honor our connections in the ways that we have available until we can again be together in beloved community. If you are a visitor here today, we are so glad that you found us. We welcome you and thank you for spending time with us, and we hope you will come back again soon. Our church was begun in 1833 as a liberal Christian community. We are now a community of many faith journeys and beliefs, guided not by a creed, but by a covenant to uphold shared principles marked by love, respect, and justice. Our faith community continues to work together to put our UU principles and values into action, to build beloved community, and to serve the purpose of justice for all here in the Richmond community. We welcome you to live these principles with us as you continue your faith journey. We welcome you with all your diverse identities as a whole, multifaceted, and beloved person. If you are a visitor here today or new to Unitarian Universalism, and would like to learn more about our faith and our community, we invite you to check out our website, join our Facebook group, and reach out to us by email at membership@richmonduu.org. We hope you will join us for our virtual coffee hour following this morning's service through a separate Zoom link available on Saturday's email and on our Facebook site. Coffee hour is a great time to connect with fellow church members. And if you are new to First UU, a chance for us to get to know you better and you to get to know us better. I would also encourage church members and visitors to tune into our Sunday morning services 5 to 10 minutes early in order to catch the rolling announcements. And also to check out our First News Weekly every week. This is a great way to stay informed concerning important events and activities occurring within our church community. Again, welcome to this joyful Sunday, made sacred by us being together, worshiping, and sharing our time with each other.
Welcome in. We light this chalice because we know this place to be our spiritual home, a place where we do the work of the interior life. Choose your language. This is a special place, a place of history and influence and commitment and community. Welcome to this place. Good morning, and welcome to our homecoming. We thought by now we'd all be starting to gather together again, but not quite yet. Nonetheless, we're celebrating homecoming by welcoming you back and hoping that you find something here worth your energy, something that lifts you up. The first story that I'm going to tell in homecoming, and it's all stories that I'm going to tell, has to do with this, the 1893 to 1993 quilt, because everything in our congregation that's a milestone gets a quilt. The quilters made this, and it celebrated what they said was the 100th anniversary of the church. On my very first visit here, David Hicks McPherson, our beloved emeritus minister, newly departed, said to me, "That is a lie." What did he mean? He meant this simply. The Unitarians and the Universalists who were in Richmond around 1830 were small groups. Most of them came from New England. They were a various collection of railroad people and bankers and others, and there were not enough of either one of the groups to start a church. But they knew they had some commonalities, and so they formed the very first Unitarian Universalist Church of Richmond in 1830. It took them a while to get going, but once they did, here they were, a voice in Richmond. And that voice was rather loud. They invited preachers to come from the north. Some of them were not too well. Some of them had tuberculosis and were looking for a southern pulpit to help cure themselves. Others were folks who seemed to be very powerful for 2 years and then they had to move on. But the important thing is they invited into our pulpit preachers who spoke of abolition, who resisted the existence of enslavement and the slave economy that was the heart of the South. And Richmond actually was a place that was starting to learn that maybe that wasn't the best way. But, of course, when the war broke out, the church was persona non grata. Their minister was arrested for being a spy, probably part of the Llewellyn spy ring here in town, and was put into jail and exchanged for a prisoner later on. So David wanted me to let you know, the first story is that we organized this church in 1830, get a quilt for that, and that pretty soon, the 200th anniversary of our church will be celebrated. I know, it's a change of consciousness. The bells behind me are the Jefferson bells, which used to sway from the top steeple of the church at Harrison and Floyd, a church building that's still there. You can see it. And so the Jefferson bells and this quilt together ought to remind us to look at our history. Pat Vaughn, who has served as our volunteer archivist and done amazing work, has documented that people from the prior church were a part of the second church. David wanted me to know that the continuity of the church was real and that we've been here since 1830. That means we'll be celebrating the 200th anniversary of this congregation very soon. That's the first story. Welcome to homecoming. This is the place where we hung a banner supporting marriage equality in the church. And this is story number 2. We hung a banner here soon after I arrived because at the meeting where the election was held to call me to Richmond, there was also a resolution to fight the Defense of Marriage Act that was being voted on in Virginia that fall. The congregation approved that resolution and hung a banner, which, like most of our provocative banners for basic rights, got torn down a couple times. But we wanted it out front where it could be seen. At the time, our courtyard was walled off. At the time, we were a different kind of church. And so we hung the banner and began to argue and advocate for gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual rights. In fact, we added more initials as the time went on. And as our siblings know, we took on hosting the Pride prom that Side by Side conducted during those days. We showed up at the Capitol repeatedly to argue for same-sex rights. As it happens, when finally marriage was allowed, I happened to be in California with other senior ministers of large churches. Across the room was the Reverend Mary Catherine Mourne, the pastor of Fairfax at that time, and I looked across at her and I sidled over to her and I said, "Mary Catherine, Virginia is an equality state for marriage." We celebrated deeply that event. This church was key in fighting the DOMA and setting down the absolute actions that would say it is wrong to deny the rights of citizens to any of the citizens, regardless of sexual orientation, who you love, or how you understand your identity. One person who was deeply involved in the campaign said, without the Unitarian Universalists, we wouldn't have been half as effective as we were against the DOMA. So, this is the corner where that banner was hung, and our commitment to GLBTQ rights remains strong. Right now, we fight more now for trans rights and had some great wins last year, but there's more to do. Story 2 is not over. Welcome to President's Hall, named to honor the hardworking, dedicated leaders who become president of our congregation and move our mission forward. President's Hall is the scene of story number 3. It happens in 2008 when Barack Obama was inaugurated. And talking with Becky Lathan and a few other folks, we decided we'd get a projector and try to capture the signal to show on a big screen the inauguration of Barack Obama, the first man of color to be elected president of our country. I was here that day, and we thought we would get a crowd of maybe 10, maybe 20 people who'd want to meet about lunchtime and just be there. Instead, the chairs went to the end. About 100 of us gathered that day. And the moment that I remember above everything else is everyone was sitting and talking. As the proceedings start, we listen to the music and the poetry and all the fanciness of the inauguration. And then the Star-Spangled Banner was played. Everyone stood up, because if there was ever a moment when our hopes were being realized in an instant, it was this inauguration. I remember how we felt that day, like there was a tremendous milestone that had finally been crossed and that we would not go back. How little we knew. Story 3 is this. Our congregation was defined by the changes that happened with the election of Barack Obama and the continual resistance to his leadership, the increased polarization of our country, and ultimately the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States. But Virginia turned blue, as Richmond already had, hardly recognizable to the city it once was some decades before. Richmond was changing. The country, we hoped, was changing. And for us here at First Unitarian Universalist, it helped us recommit ourselves to the work of liberal religion, which is always, always in freedom and in hope to live the values that we hold, to include all, to welcome all, to live in a community that is diverse and rich, and that hope will arise from the fact that there are good people everywhere doing good things. That's the third story. Story 4 happens in 2014. That was the year we began the Richmond Pledge. It was a terrible Friday night in which we received more bad news about people dying in the hands of the police. Black folks were dying, brown folks too, in police custody, in statistics that belied anything of what would happen to white folk. Among the victims had been Eric Gardner the summer before, and Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old who was murdered, killed within seconds of an arrival for having a toy gun near a project, a 12-year-old, which the policeman described as being an adult-sized man. We didn't know what to do. It was our Friday night gathering, and as we met to discuss it, an idea came forward. Annette Marquis was familiar with a thing called the Birmingham Pledge, written by an attorney, who asked that everyone in Birmingham make the pledge to fight and to resist the powers of racism so endemic, and to commit every day to look yourself in the mirror and say, what am I doing? And how can I commit to fight racism? That Sunday when we brought forward this big banner, which, by the way, Kinko's made happen once they understood what we were needing. They told us they were backed up and then made it happen. Thank you, Tom Fitzpatrick. That banner, okay, we placed it out for people to sign, and we didn't know if we'd get a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen people to sign. Again, we didn't expect everyone to rise up. And yet, hundreds of signatures, including those of our junior high and teen group, went on that banner. Since then, we've added other banners, and this is just the first sign of how this works. This is the One Voice Chorus's pledge. There are 2 of them. They exist in our lobby as well, because One Voice Community Choir practices here. And when they saw what we did, they were all about it and joined us by creating their own, as of course did the Community Church of Glen Allen and many others. The work goes on. You can check it out at Richmond Pledge or Living the Pledge, websites to design how you can make that connection. I put this up by my mirror every morning. I don't read it every morning, but I remember that it all starts with me, in the sense that I must confront my own racism. I must be accountable to others. And every day I have to recommit to the work because it's not easy. Over in the corner, you can just see Matter. That's from the Black Lives Matter banner. And that's a part of this story. When the banner was hung, there were many efforts to take it down, including some guy who had such bad aim with a brick that he managed to hit the seam in between the windows. But the truth of the matter is, with the banner, is with this, and with all that we commit ourselves to, is we're challenging ourselves to live up to what they say. That's the 4th story. The 5th story is about Charlottesville in 2017, where neo-Nazis and white supremacists flood in, not only to protest the removal of a Robert E. Lee statue in the center of town, but simply to rally and be violent and threaten, as they did to the church where the counter-protesters were gathered the night before. You know, the famous Tiki Light March. The next day, Heather Heyer would be killed. Dozens of others would be injured, including folks from Richmond, some of whom are connected with our church, indirectly as well. Our folks, our own folks, were beaten, hurt, harmed. Our intern minister, Walter Clark, ran into the melee between Antifa and the white supremacists to pull people out who were injured and could not get out. That was one of the bravest things I've ever seen. People took positions to resist. There were all kinds of violent eruptions. People were beaten. But we were there. 60 of us represented this church. We told everyone, if you're not up to the physical requirements, don't go. If you're a little afraid of it, it's okay, we'll go. We'll represent the church. And 60 of us did exactly that in all kinds of levels. And I think about it now, how our people standing on the sidelines and realizing how very, very risky this was for people of color, in an impromptu way began to escort people of color to their cars, to get them safely out, to get water and other things to people who were protesting and counter-protesting. This whole event where the police and the state troopers stood by and let it happen. It was a terrible day. 2 state troopers died. It was just so awful altogether. And yet, our congregation distinguished itself. And I remember after all the adrenaline was out of me, and it took until 10 o'clock at night for that to happen, when the last car called me. It was Jamie Kilpatrick. She had been to the hospital because one of the protest choir members was a physician and had offered aid. And one of the people had been very badly injured, and she was there. Finally, when that last car called me that they were on their way home, I broke down in tears. This was bold. This was committed. It probably is the thing that impressed me most about us, because we had been doing the work hard enough that we understood what our role needed to be. And even if you were a person back here just sending good wishes, we went in your name. This is an amazing church.
Our Share the Plate recipient this month is the Read Center, READ. Read Center's mission is to help adults with low-level literacy develop basic reading, communication, math, and digital skills so they can fulfill their roles as citizens, workers, and family members. Read Center is a community-based nonprofit organization providing educational opportunities to adults with low-level reading and communication skills for over 38 years. Learning to read as an adult is complex, and the students are often those who have had very limited success in school. Read serves students in a very individualized way so that they can acquire literacy and make life progress. This is accomplished by providing classroom instruction, one-on-one tutoring, an adult literary curriculum, and educational resources to support students. The Read Center makes a tremendous impact upon the lives of students. A student who might not be able to read at all can learn to read at an elementary level and can then be ready to learn more. For tutoring on Zoom, the Read Center can sometimes loan a student a computer to use, and the Read Center has excellent instructional books for volunteers to provide one-on-one tutoring. Being a nonprofit, the Read Center receives almost no government funding and relies heavily on donations to support their programs. Please give generously to Share the Plate in order for more adults to improve their literacy and their quality of life.
I'm outside of the area that has my office, and there's a dogwood here that was planted in honor of David Hicks McPherson's ministry to this church. David, during his ministry in the 70s and 80s, called for the removal of the statues on Monument Avenue. He said they were lies. He pointed out how difficult it made life for people of color, young people especially, to drive by and see the heroic statues that were promulgated by the lost cause, the rewriting of a false narrative in our history. The fact of the matter was, they were huge and significant, and David was a voice calling for their removal in a time when most people thought he was beside himself, couldn't imagine another way. We now know how right he was. Now, David told me one thing that was really important to him. He told me I could never leave this ministry until he had died, because he wanted me to be there at the time of his dying. For his family, for the service, for the church, even for the interment of his ashes. I fulfilled that on Saturday with his family around, his friends. David was an amazing inspiration, always present in the front row every Sunday, never failed to talk up the preacher, to encourage us in our work, and to remind us when we did great work. Actually, when the congregation did great work. David was an inspiration to me. I could have told 10 stories about the church easily that rivaled any of those and more. The purpose of a homecoming is to remind you of the strength of this congregation and how important it is. And that we can't do that in person isn't a problem. That's not a problem. It's a temporary situation. It is a temporary situation that, with children getting vaccines soon, we hope, and other things, we will be back together. And even amidst all that, people are working on risk on the Cardinals School. People are making quilts and meeting in small groups and getting together. I've got a Delphiniums meeting tonight. Are you all hooked up to your neighborhood group? Yes, it's different and it's going to be better. But I don't want the church to come back to a normal that was still a part of the old way of being. Our church is deeply committed one to another, ready for one another, able to support one another through this COVID thing and beyond.
but to challenge this changing city of Richmond, its greater metropolitan area, the Commonwealth, and the history that has been a part of our legacy is changing, such that the future will be better. So, my friends, this is a new era, and it is time for me to take my leave from you. You entrusted me 16 years ago, 15 and a half years ago, with a wonderful commission. You called me to serve this congregation. Through many different challenges, we have traveled this road together, and the church has been its strength and power. All I do is witness and trim the sails a little bit now and again. I will be leaving this church at the end of this year, and the church is going to be just fine. Everything will be all right. All will be good, because the power of the church is here. All the groups studying all the ways to practice differing religious traditions and insights. All the children growing up within a congregation and a commitment and a community. Oh, and I'll be leaving at the end of the church year. You know when the church year is. The church year ends in June. I'll be leaving at the end of May. And you'll be fine. All right, my friends. Now, to speak to you about this, I'm going to invite out into the hallway, because it won't work anywhere else, apparently. I'm going to invite our president, Denise Rhymes. She's going to talk to you about the plan, because, in fact, I cannot jump in on future plans now. I must step back. I had planned to announce to you a year ago that I would be leaving, but COVID happened and you can't leave in the middle of an emergency, right? So I will be planning to go do interim ministry. I'm told by the UUA they would like me to do that. So that is how I will serve. But you're in good hands with good leaders, with deep commitments to the justice of this community and beyond. And so I'll step aside and bring forward the great UU leader, Denise Rhymes.
Good morning, friends. I'm happy to be with you this morning on this rather auspicious occasion. Just wanted to let you know, in all of my time as Unitarian Universalist, I've spent a good deal of it working with congregations whose ministers are departing. And what I've come to learn, that all ministries end. It's a fact of life. Not all of them will end well, but we have the privilege of ending this one very well. So let's consider what we just heard from Reverend Jeanne, because whatever qualities a ministry may have, nothing can shape its impact more than how the ministry ends. And while a good ending might go unnoticed in the short term, in this case, it can only serve to enhance our ministry and its impact on all involved, both now and in the future. Our minister of 15 and a half years is leaving after a long discernment period, which Reverend Jeanne just described, which included COVID times, a run for UUA president, and lots of other life events. We've learned so very much, tried so many new things. We've changed the building, and we've grown as a congregation by leaps and bounds, both numerically and organically. The labor, the love, the time, and the effort that we've offered and that Reverend Jeanne has offered us is well beyond our ability to measure it. And what we do in the next 8 to 10 months will define the grace and the love that we all share. The ending of a settled ministry is also a grand opportunity for learning and reflection. So our goal for the next few months is twofold. First, we'll end Reverend Jeanne's ministry well by expressing gratitude, celebrating what we have accomplished together, wish each other well on what is to come, and celebrate and welcome new leadership. While there are often lots of other preparations to attend to as the congregation moves towards a new ministry, the importance of pausing to honor what has transpired in this ministry is certainly not trivial. Without question, very few people, whether ministers or congregants, are taught how to say goodbye, let alone how to do it well. Everyone will need to do this in their own time and in their own way. There's much to consider, and ultimately there's much to do. But let's not rush into the doing. Let us practice being together, whether virtually, physically, or in our hearts. And once we've had time to do that, then only can we move to our second goal. Who's going to lead us? How will we call a new minister? We haven't done it for a long time. How will we be together in future in terms of building that beloved community? We will do all of this with care, with collaboration, and with mighty conviction. For those of you who are avid organizers and planners, I'd like to just give you a peek of what's coming into the future, just so that you know a little bit about the timeline. About 13 years ago, Reverend Jeanne hired a church administrator. She had a vision of growing the staff as the church grew and using every opportunity to broaden the skills and the uniqueness and depth of the staff. Although it was serendipity that brought us Reverend Sherman Logan, it was the power of the universe, I believe, shining brightly upon us that brought us the first iteration of Reverend Jeanne's vision. And that liberal Baptist minister, who also happened to have a strong business background, has grown into the role of our executive minister, as well as a cherished leader. And that leader will help us make that transition that would be a lot harder if he weren't here. So over the next 15 months, Reverend Jeanne will take her leave and Reverend Sherman will assume her responsibilities. We can talk about that timeline just a little bit later. If you'd like to join us in coffee hour, we can talk about that a bit more. But Reverend Sherman has expressed his strong desire to remain with the congregation. He knows us, he knows our strengths, our weaknesses, and our peculiarities. He's in a prime position to serve as our interim minister through next year. Beginning early in 2022, we'll start the search process, which calls for us to consider any internal candidates before we talk to any external candidates. We will talk more about that in the next couple of months so that you can understand exactly how it will work and how the congregation will be involved. That process will end in the latter half of next year, and there'll be a lot more details as we go along, I promise you. But for now, in this moment and in the months to come, let us celebrate with gratitude and joy. I hope that all of you will take time to join us after the service at coffee hour, where we will be devoted to answering your questions about how we will bring this ministry to the grateful close that it truly deserves. You're going to extinguish this.
We extinguish our chalice now. And if we've had tech problems, well, we're going to be fine. Who knew we were going to be doing this in the corner?
Now for the benediction. Just this. You are strong. You are growing wiser. You are deepening your commitments. You're working for justice. So, you are fine, and all will be well. I bless all of you for the generosity that you have extended to me and to my partner Regina throughout our entire time here. Her one lament has been that she couldn't get too involved on some of the things she would love to have done. Now we'll go and tell your stories elsewhere. So start sharing stories one with another and be blessed because you are beloved. Blessed be.
Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. 3 little birds beside my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melody pure and true, saying, this is my message for you. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. 3 little birds beside my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melody pure and true, saying, this is my message for you. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Don't you worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright, alright. Don't you worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna